Hello, and welcome to our podcast series. We're excited to share this collection of episodes that accompanies the chapters of our upcoming Handbook of Using Virtual Exchange Across Disciplines, Building Global Citizens from Home. And it's going to be published by Springer, and we are looking forward to the print release in May 2026. Each podcast episode takes you behind the scenes, revealing the ideas, stories, and collaborations that brought the chapters to life. So settle in and let's explore the insights, experiences, and global perspectives that inspired this project. I'm Mona Pearl, assistant professor at Wilkes University in Pennsylvania, and the section head of the business, leadership, and entrepreneurship in this book. Today, we are going to discuss with the authors of the chapter, International Collaborative Data Analysis and Finance, Environment, Social, and Governance, ESG, Strategies in Virtual Exchange. So welcome.
Hi, I'm Michaela Kiermeier. I'm professor of financial management at the University of Applied Sciences in Darmstadt, Germany, which is also part of the European University of Technology. I mainly teach finance, financial econometrics, and digital finance at master's level. And what really drives my teaching is helping students move beyond just applying models and start thinking like decision makers in practice under uncertainty. And my wonderful partner is Beth.
Welcome, everybody. I am Beth Johnson. I am an associate instructional professor at the University of Florida in the Department of Statistics. I also serve as our experiential learning coordinator. I teach primarily applied undergraduate, upper level statistics classes. And again, focusing on having students have those real experiences working with non-textbook data. So this virtual exchange is a perfect opportunity for that.
Thank you, Michaela and Beth. So we will discuss today the chapter and how virtual exchange contributed to the student experience. So let me ask both of you. Every virtual exchange has its own origin story, the first moment when partners connect. I would really love you to share with our audience to hear your story. How did the two of you originally meet, and how did you decide that this is what you want to work on together?
This is actually a very funny story that we have here. Beth and I actually met through COIL itself, which I think is such a great example of how virtual exchange can actually work. I reached out via COIL Connect, and when I saw there was demand for collaboration from the University of Florida, that's how I got connected to the University of Florida. And how did you experience that, Beth?
Yes, and from there, once we were introduced, we were taking part in the COIL training module. So we were able to go through the experience and the entire process, learning process ourselves. So I think that helped us when we were applying it in our classes, that we knew all of some of the things that could go wrong, things that went right, things that we liked. And I think it helped our students a lot.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. This is wonderful. I mean, you know, it's basically an example what we ask our students to do to collaborate the first meeting and how to connect. And this is an example of how you as the instructors did it beforehand, leading by example. Wonderful. So what motivated you to design this virtual exchange at the intersection of finance and ESG?
Well, the core question of our module has always been, do ESG strategies actually improve financial performance of firms? And in coming up with a structure for the collaborative online learning, we started out with some data sets that might have been a little weak.
Yes, that when we started the first semester, we were working with some, I think, data that was collected from one of Michaela's students. And it was our, again, first time going through this process. ESG is not, a lot of my students were not business or finance majors, so we had to spend a lot of time just getting them up to speed on what ESG is. And yes, from the statistical side, the data was limited, but again, all of these were learning processes, moments that we had.
So, as a follow-up on this, what gaps in data analysis, finance, and ESG education were you trying to address through this collaboration? What did you see that actually virtual exchange could be a great contributor for the students to enhance their understanding and their practical experience?
I would say the most important impact of virtual exchange was that it transformed finance from a technical subject into a reasoning discipline. In a traditional classroom, students focused on applying models, but in our virtual exchange, they had to explain, justify, and interpret. And that's a completely different level of learning. In finance, the hardest part is not running the module or the models. It's defending what the model is telling you.
And that goes for our stat students as well. Our undergraduate students were not all stat majors. Some of them were, excuse me, some of them were minoring in data and getting a data analytics certificate. And all of this process of being able to communicate complex methods and terms is part of our curriculum. But having the virtual exchange where they had other students to work with, they had Michaela as a wonderful mentor on the finance area, really made this data set come alive for them.
And I'm sure the students appreciate it. These are really employability skills. So based on the chapter, what do you think, what impact did virtual exchange have on the subject matter of your course? Meaning a few specific employability, praxis skills. What can they put on their resume, for example?
Well, if I start, I would say in a single classroom, students often share similar expectations, but in our setting, they encounter different perspectives, different standards of evidence, and different ways of dealing with uncertainty. And also the module forced the students to articulate their reasoning on a much higher level than without. So I would say without virtual exchange, students learn how to apply models, yes, but with virtual exchange, they learn how to think with models.
And that, again, goes for our statistics students as well. The whole interview process for stat majors has changed. When they go for an interview, they are posed with a set of data. They might have to solve a problem very quickly. And all of these experiences that we can offer them through their undergraduate career gives them the opportunity to get comfortable with the process of research, working with others, working in teams, being able to talk about, ask questions when they don't understand a particular context, like what is ESG and what is its meaning. And it really just makes them more confident in their ability to be researchers.
This is great. And this is what we kind of used to call the soft skills or all of that. But these are actually the human skills, especially when we are all challenged with AI and everything else. So let me ask this question now with a different spin on it. So, what do you think would have been missed in teaching your disciplines if virtual exchange were not included?
I would say that if we had done this without virtual exchange, then, as I said already, as I mentioned earlier, students would still learn which model applies. However, they would not learn how to communicate and how to motivate the answers that our teams were supposed to find. So it goes from just model application to actually being able to decide under uncertainty and to communicate this decision. And this is exactly what finance and practice looks like. And this is then completely something that we usually miss if we don't have virtual exchange as part of our module.
And I think for my students that the ability for virtual exchange to understand the importance of their analyses. A lot of time when we're working on modeling, we're working on our own, like maybe textbook data. Looking at non-textbook data was wonderful because it wasn't as clean and pretty as what they're used to seeing. It allowed them to really make the data come alive for them, so they understood the importance of making those decisions, and that maybe there wasn't a single right answer because they're so used to being students of having the right answer, that they realize that there's a lot of uncertainty through this process, and it is a process that they learn. And having Michaela and the other students helping them through really understanding the power of what data analysis can do in making decisions.
Fascinating. Actually, you turn the project, which is pretty much straightforward, to something that is much more elaborate and with much more potential. Amazing. So let me ask you, were there unexpected learning moments, aha moments, funny moments, I don't know, moments that emerged organically from the dialogue and from the virtual exchange? Anything you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think we had a couple of what we think of human moments. One of them was, for example, the following. We went from some smaller data sets to really, big data sets. And when we did that, I was not totally able at the first batch to bring all the data together. So I, for example, then sent out the ESG rating pillar scores out a little later. And some students said, oops, this data is missing. Where is that data? And we then figured out, yeah, it's also about expectations of students where data is to be found, in what structure the data should be available, and when it was not exactly what the students expected, then they really started to communicate with each other. And this was a moment where they actually overcome, say, barriers that you do not have in a classroom only setting.
That is correct, Michaela. I mean, the other thing that happens with our classes is that mine starts in the early August, where Michaela's doesn't start until October. So we're discussing all of this before her class jumps in. Last semester, we were starting this process, and one of the students, they have to volunteer to be part of this group. And she really wanted to be part of it, but during the whole process, she became very overwhelmed with the entire process. And at one point, she mentioned she was just ready to quit because she wasn't sure if she could do this. Um, I encouraged her to stick it out, and then Michaela came to talk to them, and I think that made such a difference, that human difference of sticking it through when things get tough, when things aren't exactly how you expect them to be, and also to explain this is a normal part of the research process, that we have days where things just aren't quite where we like them to be. She ended up sticking it out. She finished the project, and afterwards she was really grateful that she got to see it through. So I think this is really good for the students to understand this, how we can all work together to overcome the struggles of doing a research project.
Sounds like some of the students got some life lessons as well, that not everything works exactly when and how you want it, which is part of collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Any closing comments, thoughts that you may have, look into the future, anything that you want to say that basically our listeners can be aware of?
Well, the most important thing I would like to say is this virtual exchange really gave our students or my students the opportunity to experience how finance decision making is actually done in practice. And this is the most important takeaway for me and for my students, because students then learn how to make decisions even when the answer is not there and there is uncertainty. This is finance.
And for my statistics students, the same thing is just learning how to work with clients. Um, Statistics as a whole works to solve problems. We help people analyze data. We have to be very comfortable working with people in different fields and being, asking questions so we can make sure that we're giving them the best interpretation, the best help that we can. And I think that's a really good lesson that they learn through virtual exchange, and also just understanding the importance of data internationally, and how it's a little bit different than how we do things maybe in the States. So all of this was really good learning skills for the students. And I think for me personally, it was wonderful working with Michaela through this process. And I think it creates collaboration between us, the facilitators as well. So I think that has just been, something good for all instructors to have to go through this process.
Fantastic. And the testament is, and now I have to add a little plug for the chapter. The testament is that you co-authored, and it's not just the teaching, it's all the activities beyond. So thank you so much, Michaela and Beth. And for everyone that wants to know more about the chapter and the research component, the chapters will be available very, very soon. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.